Welcome to We Don't Have Cookies with your host, Jason Marshall.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show and welcome to the first episode of November, where all month long I'll be talking to people who have never been on the podcast before. It's going to be a wild month. Speaking of which, joining me right now is the host of the Wild Charles Show, streaming on Facebook Watch. It's Charles Wieand. How you doing?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I've been watching a lot of your videos, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on, because your show is one of the craziest shows that I've seen in a while. You're like the zoologist Steve Irwin mixed with Steve-O from Jackass.
I've met Steve-O, but yeah, thank you.
You seem to really like crocodiles and alligators. Is that something that you've always had an interest in, or is this something that's happened later in life?
Well, when I was growing up, I always liked alligators, like big dinosaurs, right? So I've always liked alligators. Actually, I was afraid of alligators for the longest time. Like I used to have like nightmares where I was waking up and, there are like alligators on the ground. You got to like try not to hop from place to place so you don't. But I don't know. I just have kind of a fascination with alligators. So I've always had that. It was much later that I kind of got into doing a lot of alligator wrangling and stuff. My current romantic relationship is with alligators. So
not a lot of people go down that path of alligator wrangling. How did that come about? Was it, clearly it's something that you had to search out, right? I mean, it's not something that people just kind of
fall into. It's kind of crazy because, I started out doing internet videos and I was just goofing around with friends, and we went out, and it wasn't with alligators at first, it was sharks. We actually went out shark diving, and we went down to Miami area, and we were diving off the coast of Florida. And on that trip, we ended up going through an alligator, airboat thing. And one of the guys was joking, "Hey man, if you were really tough, you'd get in the water with that alligator right there." It planted a seed. I'd never ever think I would actually get in the water with an alligator, because that's nuts. Who what person in their right mind would ever do that, right? But I thought, well, maybe I could do something with an alligator. Maybe I could do a video. That would be cool, right? And then I was like, it would be cool to know how to wrangle alligators. So looked up a guy that's been on Animal Planet. It's kind of hard. That's the thing. They don't actually have like schools where you can just be like, hey, I want to go to the University of jumping on the back of a alligator that might bite my hand off, right, and get my degree. In fact, one of the my gator professor, professor of gator wrangling, Bob Freer, actually said one of the qualifications you got to have for wrangling alligators, there's two things. The first one is an IQ, a low IQ. But no, anyways, the crazy thing about it is I started out, I was doing on land, like handling stuff. And sure enough, the next year I'm in the water with them, underwater with them, and it just has gotten crazier and crazier from there. But I love alligators. Do a lot of other episodes and stuff. I do a lot of cool animals. I've done stuff with bees and sharks and all kinds of stuff, but I always come back to the alligators because the alligators, I feel like that's like my spirit animal,
There are so many videos that I would like to go into, but I'm going to start with the one that really, I think, has drawn a lot of people's attention, not just mine, was where you were going through an alligator pond while you were on top of an inflatable alligator.
Yeah, I'm happy you didn't ask about the naked beekeeping one first. That's nice. Finally, somebody has not asked about the naked beekeeping one. Yeah, the inflatable alligator one. Yeah. What are your questions?
Where did that idea come from? I just walk me through that experience from inception, because I can't fathom just sitting around one day and being like, what would be a cool video? Because I also recently saw a video of yours where you had a really close call with an alligator. It was facing away from you, turns just about got your hand. You had something in your hand and it totally
So in that video, I'm actually off to the side. So that Jay is actually in that video. It almost got Jay's hand.
Oh.
But that same alligator also turned on me earlier and almost stuck right up on me too. So there's a longer version of that video. I don't know which one you watched, but I can tell you all about that gator. But that's a different video. So
But
what do you want first? The inflatable alligator or almost okay, great. So here's the thing: like most people, they get ideas in their head and they think maybe they don't even get the ideas in their head. I get a lot of crazy ideas that just pop in my head. And most people, they just think, it's a crazy idea, or they just don't, they repress that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me, I do that. So I get a crazy on my idea. And I was like, hey, wouldn't that be crazy to, it's just funny. It just struck me as funny. And in a way, it also kind of shows something about alligators too, because I mean, most people think that, I'm not saying to do that. Never mind. Don't do that. Don't do that. But alligators often get a bad rap. If you kind of know how they work, they're not as dangerous as you might think. But if you've not worked with them, don't go anywhere near them because you'll get eaten and die and then you'll blame me. But yeah, I mean, what's more fun than swimming on an inflatable crocodile with alligators? That's as much fun as you can get, right?
Yeah, there's nothing much more fun than that. But you did come close with another video that I saw of you with alligators where you and maybe it was your instructor or just a friend of yours, but you walked into a pool of alligators. There were
a pond of alligators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was like 68 of them in there, if I recall.
Yeah. There were over, I believe there's 68 alligators in there. Yeah, that's actually with Bob Freer, who taught me gator wrangling, and he's kind of like he's like the gator Moses, I guess. I would say that he's that was his idea. Wow, so that was probably one of the crazier videos that I think I've ever done. Crazier things that I've ever done, because he's just like, you want to walk in the water, and I'm just like, how far? Well, how far do you want to go? Right? And there's 70, almost, we'll round up. We'll call it 70 alligators in the pond. There might be 2 that we don't know where they're at, right?
Right.
The crazy thing about that is, when you're walking in, the alligators, you see them, but they go underwater. And the water is muddy. You can't see. And there are 70 it's like an alligator landmine, right?
Yeah.
So literally, it's like they duck down as you approach them, and they just sit on the bottom. But they're still there, and if you step on them, they will bite you. So it's very much kind of walking. In that video, you'll see we actually have sticks, and we use them to actually, like a blind man, to kind of tap and see if there's a gator over there, right? Because you don't want to step on one of the gators. So you're kind of navigating. And you're also, obviously they could swim up on you too, right? Mm-hmm. But you're navigating it and trying not to step on an alligator's tail or head and the stick actually got bit. There are alligators, and there's a number of times where you're bumping an alligator and you feel it right there, The alligators will actually swim up behind you too. So once you walk down they can actually swim up behind you. So you're dragging your feet to try to get out, and it's incredible crazy. If you paid close attention to that video, you'll see that I'm wearing a Jurassic Park shirt on that.
Yeah.
So what could possibly go wrong?
And I heard the Jurassic Park music in the background. It was a good accompaniment to the video. It's one of those things that it was so crazy. Even though I watched the video, I still can't picture it. Does that make sense? It just doesn't process.
Well, I get people all the time who are like, that's not real. I've gotten that on a number of my videos where it's not real. That's video editing, or, it's CGI. No, it's all, everything in my videos is 100% real. Yeah, some of it's pretty crazy. But the funny thing is, I got pictures of that and I smiled. I was having a good time. That's a good time for me. What does that say about me? Walking into a pond of alligators, I don't know.
You mentioned it earlier. We have to address it. It's the naked beekeeping video. Longtime listeners, I don't think I've ever brought this up, but my grandfather on both sides of my family, they all had at least 10 to 20 beehives. And
they're beekeepers. That's awesome.
Yeah. And growing up, we had, I don't know, 6 to 8 outside. So I understand the beekeeping mentality, but we never did it naked like you did.
Well, I mean, that's another one of those where, who hasn't thought about beekeeping naked? Come on. I know you don't want to admit it, but come on. Oh, man. Awkward. But no. Yeah, so I had this idea. It popped in my head. Inspiration. It just came, it's like divine inspiration. Why don't I do a video naked with bees? I grew up beekeeping. My dad is actually a beekeeper. So I've worked with bees and stuff. I've never done anything like that before. And I actually brought it up to my dad, who's been beekeeping for a long time. He's like, why would you want to do that? And I'm like, well, how many times do you think I would get stung? And he's just like, I don't know, hundreds, 10. I have no idea. And he's just like, that's not a good idea. Don't do that, right? So I did anyway. And yeah, that video is out there. If any of you guys are watching and you're like, oh, I don't want to see that, it's PG. It's I conveniently place frames of thousands of stinging insects. You don't see anything. The nudity is covered up. All right. But yeah. I had bees crawling up in the inside of my leg, and it was, that was an experience too. The crazy thing about that one is that I didn't get stung a single time.
Wow.
I don't know, call it incredibly dumb luck. I was kind of shocked at it, so I was just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to do a Buddha here. They're not going to sting me. I'm just going to meditate and goof around with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another one of the videos out there.
Yeah, to me, it was one of those things where I saw it, I just couldn't, even though I've went to, it sounds weird to say this out loud to a person, but you come from a beekeeping family, so you get it, I guess. I went to a beekeeping school where they trained us and all that stuff before we went out and did it. And even knowing how to act around bees properly. And I've actually wrangled a wild swarm of bees and had them go into a hive.
Very cool.
We did it without beekeeping suits and stuff like that. I kind of felt badass doing that, but that doesn't come close to doing it naked.
Yeah, it doesn't get any more, nude than that, I guess. That it was an experience. It definitely was an experience. I'd tell you that.
But you've done a lot of extreme things. We talked briefly.
Oh yeah. So people latch on to the animal stuff too, and like I've talked to a number of people. Chris Jericho had me on his podcast. I've been on a number of podcasts. I've talked a little bit back and forth to maybe the Discovery Channel about possibly getting a show, and they always latch on to the animal stuff. And I actually do. I love animals. So my Facebook show is a lot about animals, but I've done a ton of other stuff, jumping out of airplanes, rappelling off buildings, all kinds of crazy stuff.
I was going to ask, what's one of the craziest things you've done? Because you just touched on it. I've seen you skydiving and the rappelling down a building. I've been rappelling myself, and it's just off of cliffs and things like that. I don't think I could do it from a building the height that you did.
Oh, you probably could. The weird thing is that, so the craziest thing is probably not the thing I was most scared of, because animals and stuff probably don't scare me as much as they should. Right. Mm-hmm. And the weird thing about me is I just get really calm. And so if it's like a dangerous situation, I just get really calm, and focused. I don't know. I get scared before a little bit. Right. But then when I'm like doing it, I don't feel scared. So that's kind of weird. But some of the things that actually scared me are like the height stuff. I'm actually terrified of heights. Like jumping out of airplanes is probably the scariest thing I could imagine ever doing. Mm-hmm. And I did that. But statistically, that's probably a lot safer than the other stuff with the animals. Because so. The gear is tested and dependable, and you got a reserve, and if you know your procedures, you're a lot safer skydiving than most people think. Now, having alligators and all around you, that's it's probably more dangerous. But it's funny because like sometimes you're like afraid of things, and it's not necessarily it's the most dangerous. It just that's your wiring, you know. It's your tuning, right?
Yeah, because I'm terrified of heights too, so I totally relate to that.
Oh, heights scare me. Yeah, they still scare me. But I don't know. Skydiving was one of the most incredible. I mean, skydiving is awesome. I'd love to do even more. I'd love to do some base jumping at some point. That's one thing I have not done yet, just because I haven't logged enough skydives yet to really trust myself base jumping. But crazy, man. I don't know. I did a video underwater with an anaconda where I wrapped it around me, and that was pretty crazy. Man, the video that's out there with the 900-pound alligator where Jay almost gets bit, that was pretty insane. Because we're literally in the water with the alligator, and a lot of alligators, they'll actually they just want to get away. They'll go and go there to the other pond. If you try to catch them or something, you don't, and they'll go off their own thing. But that alligator was one where it'll literally hunt you. If you set foot in its pond, it wanted you out. And there was another alligator in that pond too, which we never even saw. We didn't know where it was at. So we're paying attention to the one in that video whose name is Bruce Almighty, probably because he can send you to see your maker. And I'm doing a live stream, and Jay takes the camera from that for a minute, and the alligator's turned all the way in the other direction. It's totally turned in the other direction, and it just comes out of nowhere and sweeps around, bites into the selfie stick, comes very, 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 very close to getting his hand. And people were watching it live. So people were freaked out. I'm glad he still has his hand. I'm very glad.
How close did
That's not what I'm going for.
How close did he get? Because looking at the video, I swear I'm not over.
It looks like it took his hand. Yeah. Oh yeah, it looks like it took his hand. Yeah, I thought it took his hand. When I was there, I thought it took his hand.
It had to be less than an inch away, right?
Yeah, less than an inch. Yeah.
Yeah, he really, really got lucky because, like,
and you can see the power that alligator had to propel itself up like that. It's just incredible, absolutely incredible.
And to me, one of the most amazing things was he was facing the total opposite direction, and he came flipping around. That it was. Yeah, it sounds weird to say this about an alligator, but it was premeditated because he knew exactly where to go.
Well, it makes you wonder how crazy I was earlier when I had that gator by the tail, because he can swing that much. Yeah, that alligator would literally hunt you. He's got his territory, and he's the king of that pond. And if you're in that pond, you're in his domain. And if he doesn't want you there, he'll get you out. Yeah, no, it was like that place is really cool. That is actually in Colorado where that video was shot. Believe it or not, there are alligators in Colorado. Well, they're not native alligators in Colorado, but there is an alligator farm out in Colorado where Jay Young, who owns that farm, is actually raising them in hot springs. They're actually in the water. It stays warm all year round. So the alligators are fine because their temperature is connected to the water temperature. So it's pretty crazy. He's got pictures where the alligators will actually crawl up on the snow and they'll just sit up on the snow in the winter in Colorado.
Wow.
They get cold, they just get back in the water. It's really crazy place out there. I've been journeying across I just journeyed across the whole country, basically. I looped through, I don't know, state after state, making videos everywhere from Florida Keys to New Orleans to Texas to Southern California, Colorado. Out on Facebook Watch, there are over 70 episodes out there. And I've done a ton of live streams out on Twitter. I think there's over 300 or some videos out there. I started out doing stuff on Twitter, and I grew up with most of the followers on Twitter first. And now I'm just growing so huge on Facebook that I feel bad for my Twitter followers because I'm not on Twitter as much because more people are watching on Facebook now. I gained I think this week it was like it jumped like 27,000 new followers this week, which is really crazy.
Yeah.
So now it's up to, I think, 250,000 or something on Facebook,
Man.
and it's 200 something thousand on Twitter. So it's like, I mean, it's like over 500,000 people across different platforms, which is weird.
Well, it also helps you meet people like the alligator from Happy Gilmore.
Oh yeah. So there is an episode out there on Facebook Watch, Wild Charles Show, where I meet the actual alligator from Happy Gilmore. This is the alligator that was in the movies. He's a big time celebrity, and he's probably been in over 30 different movies, from Happy Gilmore to all those old alligator movies. There's like Alligator 1, 2, and I don't know how many of those movies they made. He was the alligator in that. He was in Dr. Dolittle. He was in Interview with a Vampire. He was in he's like an A-list animal celebrity. I got to meet him. Oh, he was on the Tonight Show. He's more
Really?
way more famous than me. That alligator is way more famous than I. he was on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno and Steve Irwin.
This might be a weird question, but
yeah.
Why him?
Why that alligator?
Yeah. Is he just more tame, or is there...
Oh, no, he's not more tame. Like, so he'll bite you. He's bit Jay. No. He's got, if you're doing a Hollywood movie, you actually want an alligator that's got a little personality, because you want an alligator that's going to bite around and give you that money shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want an alligator just going to lay there and be like, hey, what's going on, right? You want an alligator that's actually going to give you that, oh, wow,
Yeah, that's a good point.
He just happened to be an alligator that was owned out there. I don't know who exactly owned him before, but one of the places works with animals out there, and eventually he got too big and they couldn't use him in movies anymore. They didn't want to handle him anymore. It was too much trouble to handle. So he retired out to the hot springs in Colorado.
It sounds like he had a good agent.
Yeah. I don't know how much money he saw from it. He's getting plenty of fish now, though. So,
but you're also a comedian.
I got my hands in like so many different things, man. It's so I do comedy. I do occasionally do stand up. I do music. I write funny songs and all kinds of other stuff besides just animal stuff. And I love doing that stuff. And some of my animal videos are a little comical. That's why some of that stuff comes through, where you have naked beekeeping, or you have me on an inflatable crocodile and things like that, because I kind of got that mind that my brain is kind of wired for being a goofball, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been so busy with videos, I haven't done as much stand-up, but I do occasionally do stand-up and funny songs and all kinds of stuff. And that's a lot of that's on my Twitter. Facebook has some weird licensing stuff with songs and stuff, and I don't know. They seem to really love the animal show out on Facebook, so that's mostly animals. But Twitter, I do all kinds of stuff.
Do you have any funny moments from the stage?
Funny moments from on stage? That's a good question. Anytime I'm on stage is funny. Come on, man. No.
That's a good answer. I like that.
No. I have had times where I was introduced and people are like, oh, what the heck is this, internet personality guy doing after doing stand up? I don't even know if he's funny, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's been fun. I like having like the live audience. That's one thing I like in my live streams too, where I like to have like an audience there that's like responding.
Mm-hmm.
The weird thing about like stand up and that stuff is, I think it's actually a lot harder than turning on your phone. I could turn on my phone and have 1,000 people watch easy, and that's like easy for me. I'm like totally like chill. And stand up has actually taken a lot more. When you get up on a stage, it takes a lot more work, where you're kind of like, I don't know, it's just a little bit harder for me. I'd love to do kind of like a stage show that's got a little bit of animals, a little bit of music, a little bit of the comedy. I'm trying to incorporate a lot of that into my online show, but different people watch my show for different reasons. Some of them really like the stuff where I'm singing funny songs and stuff like that. Some of them just want to see if I'm going to get eaten by an alligator. So, whatever reason you watch the show, right? Just as long as you're watching.
That's right. Charles, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. Is there anything you'd like to promote before you go?
Facebook Watch Show. That is growing a ton. Go out and check that out. It's the Wild Charles Show. I'm out on Twitter, Charles Wieand. Go out and follow me on Twitter. That's one place where I do respond a lot. And if people want to tweet questions to me, I might see it. And I try to respond a lot out there. I'm going to be doing a ton more alligator videos, shark stuff, bunch of shark stuff this winter. So you guys can tune in for that, and we'll be live on a shark boat, chumming the waters, bringing in sharks, getting in the water with sharks. Lots of cool stuff like that. So yeah, and I'll be planning some more comedy show stuff. So follow me on Twitter and I'll tweet that stuff out.
Sounds good. I'm going to play a song by the Arrogant Worms called Rippy the Gator, and I'll be back.
Hi kids, welcome to the Uncle Bobo Show. Are you ready to sing? Come on, let's go! Billy and his family went on a holiday. They went down to Florida to laugh and dance and play. Bill went in for a swim, he didn't see the harm. But when he came back out again, he was short and armed. 'Cause Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp, swamp, swamp. Billy and his father went out to play some catch, but Billy missed the pass because his arm was unattached. The ball flew past his shoulder and it rolled into the swamp. When he went wading after it, his leg became a stump. 'Cause Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp, swamp, swamp. Billy and his father joined a three-legged race. They were tearing up the field, no one could keep the pace. But Billy tripped and did a flip and landed in the muck. He was running out of limbs and also out of luck. 'Cause Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp, swamp, swamp. Billy was all dirty, he really had to wash, but he couldn't use a towel 'cause his limbs had been gnawed off. He went into the water to get all clean and bright, but when his bath was finished he was only half his height. 'Cause Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp, swamp, swamp. Billy's father rolled his wheelchair up upon a hill. He wanted to put Bill where he would not get killed, but he left him on a slope and into the swamp he rolled. They dragged out his head, but there was nothing left below. 'Cause Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Rippy the Gator went chomp, chomp, chomp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp, swamp, swamp. Passing the time by ending children's lives down in the bottom of the swamp. Down in the swamp.
Hey guys, this next interview was supposed to be included on the Halloween episode last week. I'll explain what's been going on after this interview is over. I bring up Halloween quite a few times, and I don't want my guest to feel like I wasted his time by not airing the interview. But despite it being a week late, I think you'll enjoy it. My next guest is the host of the Mike Seibert Radio from Seattle, Washington. It's Mike Seibert. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, Jason. Thanks for having me on. I know we've been corresponding over Twitter the last couple weeks, and getting really excited. And I'm really excited to join you here.
Before we get too far along, I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that right. It is Mike, right? Now that I've said it 3 times, it kind of sounds weird.
Yes. Well, usually it's the last name that folks get mixed up sometimes. It's like, it's I before E except after C unless you're me. But yes, no, I am indeed Mike. I am Mike of the Mike Seibert Radio podcast. And you have it correct.
How long have you been doing radio and podcasting?
I am entering year 4. I started in summer of 2015. I was a student at a local college here in the Seattle area called Green River College in Auburn, Washington. And on that campus, they have 2 radio stations for KGRG, 89.9 FM. They play Today's Rock. It's a college radio station where basically it's, we define Today's Rock as whatever is kind of happening today. So it's kind of like the edge before the cutting edge. So it's stuff that you're going to hear on regular rock radio 6 months from now. So that's where Mike Seibert Radio comes from. It's a podcast that I call about stuff and things that are on my mind every week. And it's a very open format show. It's a pop culture show mostly. I talk about movies, TV shows, comic books, pop culture-y type of stuff. Really just kind of whatever's on my mind. I've also kept in touch with a lot of independent musicians and artists in the Pacific Northwest area from my time being on KGRG. And so anytime one of my friends that's in a band has like a new album or a new single, or they're playing a huge show or something like that, that's where a lot of my guest interviews come into place. I'd probably say like a 1-to-2 ratio of interview to personal stuff. Like one show, I'll pick a couple few pop culture topics, stuff that's trending on Twitter or things like that. Or I'll interview a guest, talking about something that they're promoting from like a band standpoint. And another format that I do is the guest co-host format, where I've kept in touch with a lot of my old college radio friends. And then I have a guy named Dave who's huge into TV. So anytime there's big TV news, or if there's we just did our fall TV preview episode. We're talking about that. I have another co-host named Killing Spree. I'm sure that's, I knew this guy for 3 years before I knew what his given name was, because that was just his on-air name, and that's all I knew him as, is Killing Spree. He used to host a heavy metal show called Late Night Death on KGRG, and he's a big horror hound and a movie nerd. And so when it's time to get especially ranty about a movie, I call up my buddy Killing Spree, and we've got a show that we're working on now for The Predator that just came out. And of all of the Predator movies, well, The Predator is one of them. So that's something that we're going to talk about. Neither of us were especially pleased with that movie. So we get super grumpy and super ranty, but
he's got to be a hard guy to find at a movie theater if you lose track of him, because you don't want to just yell out that name if you don't know his real one, right?
That's a really good point. I never thought about that. That's probably just as bad as yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. But
I would argue to say it's slightly worse.
I would think so, because I would imagine that somebody just screaming "Killing Spree." It's like, is that an invitation? Is that are we doing like The Purge? What is going on here? That's terrifying.
What's one of the funniest moments that's happened on your show?
The story that all of my buddies always tell whenever we get together is we got on this tangent. Oh, we were playing a game. Sorry. We had a game called Is It Real or Is It Fake? And where you have like 3 choices of something. Generally 2 of them are real, or generally 2 of them are fake. It kind of varies, but it was a comic book themed one. And I had found the most ridiculous, silly comic book characters around, including this character called Wild Dog, who is an obscure DC Comics character from the 1980s. He's basically he's a vigilante character, but he wears camouflage pants, combat boots, a bright blue football jersey with a laughing red dog logo on it, and a Jason Voorhees style hockey mask. And he dispenses vigilante justice and murders gangsters and mobsters and hate crime people. And his best feature of all is he's got a pair of shock gloves in that, like, he like grab you with his gloves and shock you. I mean, the reason why this is still like the story that I always love to tell is because this character is totally and completely real. And everybody on that segment with me was convinced that it was absolutely fake because of all of the different elements of this character. I mean, between like the jersey and the hockey mask and the shock gloves, it's like, there's no way this is real. Oh yeah. And his true identity is Jack Wheeler, auto mechanic by day and vigilante by night. And they were just like, you are making this up. This is total BS. And it was absolutely real. Generally, our talk segments at that time, because KGRG is a music format station, right? I mentioned it's today's rock, and we're there to play the music. Most of our talk segments were 10 to 15 minutes. So we would talk for 10 to 15 minutes, then we would play a bunch of songs, and then we would, kind of do this cycle for 3 hours every week. When we started talking about Wild Dog, by the time we got done, 38 minutes had passed where we're not playing any, it was a non-commercial station, so we didn't have quote unquote commercials, but we still had like public service announcements and promos. And so we didn't run any of those. We didn't play any songs. It was one of those things where like, my program director, who was half my age, because I mean, again, management is all students. Like a couple days later, my program director was like, please don't do that ever again. But it's one of those things that we will all always fondly remember because it was so much fun. It was just a great time. And it's like one of those college memory type of things where we always touch back on it.
Well, Halloween is right around the corner. What's one of the most frightening or shocking moments that's happened on your show?
There was a couple times where we kind of forgot we were on the radio for a minute. And even though it's a college radio station and, we have latitude, we still have the FCC and, there's certain words you can't say on the radio. And one of my co-hosts, just accidentally, blurted out the F-bomb. We do have delay equipment. So we have like a 7-second delay, but it's one of those things where it's like you hear it, then like you stop laughing for a second. And it's like, oh man. And, I just like leapt out of my chair. I remember like the chair like fell over and hit the floor and I'm just like mashing on the delay button. And yeah, it was just, it may not be one of the objectively spooky, scary, like, Jason Voorhees is going to get you type of thing. Now, granted, we were broadcasting in the middle of the night. This would be like, 10, 11 o'clock at night. And walking through the college parking lot was always kind of extra scary because all the lights they would be at like minimal lights. And we're in the Pacific Northwest. There's a lot of trees and so it would always have like a spooky, scary vibe to it. Just thinking about it, those were the ones that gave me the palpitations where I'm like clutching my pearls.
Well, thanks for being on the podcast today. Where can people find you on social media and where can they hear your podcast?
Well, they can hear my show pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. I host on SoundCloud, but it's also available on Google Podcasts, the Stitcher Radio app, Apple Podcasts, iTunes. The show is called Mike Seibert Radio. And again, the spelling on that is SEIBERT. I do new episodes mostly weekly, sometimes more than weekly, depending upon the content. Like if I have a hot, timely interview, I'll get that out sooner rather than later. As for social media, I am on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all of those at Mike Seibert Radio. Some of them have varying spellings, but if you type in Mike SEIBERT and radio into the Google machines, you will find either my podcast or my social media or anywhere that you can find me out on the interwebs.
Sounds good. Thanks again for being on the show. I'm going to take a quick break and I'll be back.
Needing help to remove any obstacles or challenges that might be holding you back from success in your business or personal life? Let me help you create a course of action that will take you to the next level personally and professionally with some bad life coaching. And remember, you can do everything.
Sorry there hasn't been an episode for the last couple of weeks. I don't want to end this episode on a down note. I'm going to make this quick. This has been one of the hardest years of my life, bar none, top 3 at least. And I got blindsided with one of the hardest pills I had to swallow in a long time. And don't want to talk about it. It's personal, but I'm working through some things. I may have to take a break for a little while longer. I may not. Hopefully I won't. And hopefully you guys stick with me through it all. And that's about all I have to say about that right now. I want to give a big shout out to Jake Hudson for the picture that he tweeted about the podcast on Twitter. That was very awesome. And it would be weird if he tweeted about it on Facebook or Instagram. But want to give that guy a shout out. I would have done it if there'd have been shows up the last couple of weeks. But next week, I will be back with an interview that I'd already recorded with Kevin Allison from my favorite sketch comedy show ever, The State, and the host of the hugely popular storytelling podcast Risk. He will be here next week. That's going to be a great show. I'll talk to you guys then.
Thanks for listening. Tell your friends about the show and leave a review. See you next time.
Radio broadcasting.